Let your curiosity rise.
Mad Bricks webcast,
Where the human spirit flies. Mad Bricks webcast. Where the human spirit flies.
Hey, welcome to the Medbix webcast. This is Raman Anamaraju. I'm the host. Thank you for joining. But let me. I have a. That we have a very interesting topics and an interesting guest also. Very exciting guest, actually, to be honest with you. So that's. Let me introduce you my co-host, a woman on perils, a woman wearing the perils. She's a better talking, better looking, better talking, and a brilliant woman. She's a doctor of nursing practice. Dr. Susan Davis. Let me welcome, Dr. Welcome, Susan. Back
Good
to the
evening. Hello, Romana.
I
Thank
love
you so very
girls,
much.
you know.
You love the pearls? I love your
I
new
love
intro.
girls,
It's
you
so
know.
sexy. Your new intro, you did a good job on that. I really like it.
Yeah, that's this is Susan. What is going on is that there's so many subjects are mixing up together nowadays. Physics interacting with biology, medicine, chemistry, philosophy, even psychology. All of them are mixing. Is a, such a way we cannot even understand how it is that interacting each other. You know that yesterday I was listening placebo effect. You know the how the mind can influence the people and in the diseases, disease regression, progress, and everything. It's a very strange world we are entering into. What do you think in general?
Well, first of all, I love it. I mean, what's not to love about learning about all of those things? I think for a million years we all worked on our silos, hiding away in your little laboratories and learning
Yeah.
your craft and nurses, doctors, physicists, chemists, microbiologists, they're all doing their own thing. And here today, we're all coming together and learning together for a single cause. I think it's amazing. I love it.
I happen to be I met her. She is one of in one of the conferences. I met a woman from San Diego State University. She remembers that my conversation with her, and then she invited me to be a mentor for a physicist group, the PhD in physics. I don't have a PhD, but I became a mentor, industry mentor for them. And through that, I met I came across the paths with this gentleman, they are upcoming guest, Dr. Dr. Stanley Maloy. I tell you, I was reading his bio, Susan. It's like we all look like children for him. He
Yeah.
has a PhD, and then in the 19 UCLY, he did a PhD in genetics, and then he was a professor. He was the president of the Association of the Microbiologists. It is a very powerful association that is a very, they did a lot of advances. Now that is mixing up with these infectious diseases, a lot of new things that is coming up. It is just a mind-boggling how they're all interacting. So he is Emeritus professor, he's a dean of San Diego State University. He is leading the innovation center in San Diego State University research program. Let me introduce Dr. Stanley Maloy. Welcome, Dr. Malloy. Thank you for joining with us.
Hello,
I'm
everyone.
honored to
It's
have
great
you.
to be here.
Good evening. Good evening. Diversity of thought. Welcome here, right? Romana, I believe that's in the entry.
Could you
And-
please
and
give
I
us a
should add-
background? I missed anything?
I
Yeah.
should add, Ramana, that the person who talked to you about physics was Usha Sinha, and she was a chair when I was dean, so I know her very well. It's a very nice connection.
Yes.
Look at
Yeah.
that.
So
You're
tell
a
us your
perfect
background a little
example.
bit. Yeah. Tell us your background, Dr. Malloy. Your background is so vast. Just like to listen a little bit about
Oh,
your.
sure. I'll give you the short version of it. But so I was an undergraduate, and I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do. But when I was an undergraduate, my brother and I started a company in the clinical laboratory space. We set up clinical laboratories for hospitals at the time. And I was going to do that for a living. And I was a senior in college, and I took a microbiology class. And I said, this is what I have to do for my life. And I just fell in love with it. And so from there, I went to graduate school, and I got a PhD. So my PhD is actually in in biochemistry, and then I have a postdoctoral fellow in genetics, and then I was a professor in microbiology. It just says something about how all these disciplines blend together. So I was a professor for many years at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. And during that time, I was involved in a lot of other endeavors, including starting some companies and that used the science to try to help people's lives, to develop ways that made life better for people. And I always felt like that the government gave me a lot of money to do basic science, and I owed it to the people who paid taxes to see what I could do to help them out. So I always had that philosophy. And then later on, I moved to San Diego State University. I was being recruited to an administrative position instead of a research position at the university. And I said, that's the worst thing ever. Never be an administrator. And I went to San Diego State, and lo and behold, I became an administrator and dean and continued to be really involved in entrepreneurship of science, as well as a variety of other areas of science. And the one other thing I'll just say is that I was really very honored to be president of the American Society for Microbiology, an international society that has America tied onto it as a historical figment, but it really is a global society. And that was tremendous opportunity to help share science around the world.
Truly a blessing. Dr. Maloy, you were also editor-in-chief for the American Society of Microbiologists, right? So you were reviewing all these people throwing articles. I'm also blind, to be honest with you. I don't know much about, I use this word peer-reviewed. We just take that as for granted. I want to know, what is a peer-reviewed? If an article is a peer-reviewed, if it is, nowadays, as you know, Dr. Maloy, a lot of people are suspecting science and what there's a lot of mixed, things coming from different quarters. What is really scientists do? How do you validate a particular aspect is really science? So tell us a little bit of that, walk through that process.
Before I tell you about that, I should preface that I'm in the process with two co-authors of finishing a book on scientific integrity that talks about the integrity of peer review, the integrity of doing research, the integrity of reporting research, and really doing these things in a way that gains trust of the public, right? So that comes back to this idea of when something is published, other scientists and the public expect that should be reproducible. It should be valid. It shouldn't just be one person's anecdote. It should be something that is real solid science so that people can continue to build on it as they go forward, right? And so this is why the whole thing of peer review is so important. So the idea is you'll bring in 3 experts who know that area, who can evaluate the data and look at the data and make comments and suggestions. Sometimes a paper might be rejected because it doesn't meet the qualities needed for that trustworthiness, right? But a lot of times what those peer reviewers do is make suggestions. So they improve the science literature by helping the authors either explain things better or maybe go back and do another experiment, right? So that, to me, that's the sweet spot of peer review. It's not to trash things, right? It's not to just push things forward. It's to help science be better, right? And this is back to the concept of diversity of thought matters, right? Having those different kinds of experts look at it allows you to bring in the diversity of thought that can really improve the scientific output.
Well, sure, because when you're working on something intensely in anything that's going to be peer reviewed, you can wear your heart on your sleeve a little bit. You've got a lot of time, a lot of hours, and we want our outcome to be our hypothesis. We're wanting to hear and see what we've written, and then when we give it to somebody else, you kind of got to be ready for that little bit of hurt feelings because not a peer review, like you said, doesn't always go the way that you anticipate. So, Dr. Maloy, I think is someone who I have not published, but I'd like to say I'm in the process of publishing something that I should have published a while ago. And reading some of the stuff about you and your background right now in peer review and as an editor, you've really inspired me. I think you worked on something teaching how do you bring educational research to the public, and going through a peer review and publishing your work is part of that process. Except it's not necessarily part of our education on how to do that.
Right. Yeah. So Susan, years ago, when peer review became really popular decades and decades ago, but when it did, a lot of times when somebody thought something was wrong, they would just be mean-spirited. They'd just say, this is not right. You need to do this again, or you should, whatever. And one of the things that's happened lately is that's not effective. That's not good for the psychology of the person who wrote the paper. It's not good at getting them to say, yeah, maybe that's right. Instead, they say, oh, that person's just a jerk, right? And so this is where learning how to do peer review really matters, because you should be able to be critical, but not mean, right? Critical, honest, and helpful. And I think that's the sweet spot that we really need moving forward.
In just about everything we do, we can always be kind, especially when someone, I always say, there they are in the arena. There's a lot of people up in the bleachers that have a commentary, but there you are in the arena, submitting your work, opening yourself up to that feedback. And so to be kind, it really goes a long way, because ultimately, Dr. Maloy, you said just a little bit ago, our goal is to get that fantastic research out. We want to get it out into the world where others can read it, they can see it, they can reproduce it, they can validate it, and maybe even go that extra step into that entrepreneurial innovation space and bring this amazing research to life. Let's put some action behind this research.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Dr. Maloy, let us go to the basics a little bit. Then I will, I have a least amount of knowledge in that area, which is that microbiology, you are talking about One Health, that is the microbiomes. There's a microbiology, the bacteria, viruses, humans, animals, and then environment. All of them are tied up with so many ways. Tell us a little bit about that. We think we are isolated. We are the kings of this town. This is COVID-19 taught us a big lesson. There are no boundaries for the diseases. There is no artificial boundaries. So tell us a little bit about that how the interaction of these microbiomes and microbiome, all these bacteria and viruses interaction with us, in fact.
Yeah. So this is something we knew about for a long time, but we just didn't put it together. And the reason is we trained the people who study human pathogens in certain places. They get their money from certain sources. In contrast, the people who work on animal pathogens, they're typically veterinarians or people who work with veterinarians, and the money that supports them comes from a different place. And then people who work on the environment, mostly they're just neglected and they don't get as much money as they should get. But so putting these three things together was really key. And this is exactly what you said. There are so many diseases that move from the environment to an animal to a human, or sometimes the other direction. And at the San Diego Zoo, we have elephants who've died from catching tuberculosis from people, right? But let's just take one example before we go to COVID. Influenza is very common in fowl, in chickens and ducks, right? And influenza very often arises in Asia, and it has to do a lot with farming practices in Asia in terms of how the interaction between humans and fowl is much closer than it is, for example, in the United States or in Europe, typically. And so very often some person will pick up this disease from a bird, and the bird one's not good at causing disease in humans, but after lots and lots of trials, the one mutant that can cause a serious disease in humans gets started there, and then it just moves around the world by our travel patterns, right? And so this is why we get these sweeps of these new influenza around the world. It's tied to the agricultural practices, the environment. It's tied to the animal, and ultimately spread to humans. But the key thing is influenza we understand pretty well. But these other diseases, we know they jump from animals to humans, but we don't really know how, right? So there's tremendous questions now with what the real source of COVID is, the animal source that went to humans. There are hints, but it's not an experiment that we can easily go back and redo, right? And of course, you don't want people doing that experiment in the lab, because if it accidentally got out, that would be damaging, right? So this confluence, One Health, if you want health of humans, you have to care about health of the environment, and you have to care about health of animals, right? We can't separate these things. And so the effort is to bring in the training so that people are thinking about these questions more, and they're more aware of it, so they can respond to it better. And it's catching on dramatically around the world. To be honest, the United States was probably the slowest place to catch on to this. And one reason for that is, in the United States, the average person is so distant from thinking about the farm, right? It's just a grocery store.
But Susan is a farmer, actually. She raises cattle up there.
Yeah,
So,
we raise beef cattle down here in Florida, so you're talking my talk.
Yeah. So, Dr. Maloy, that what do you? I'm going to put you in an uncomfortable situation about the political side of it a little bit. I want to ask you: is it the COVID-19? Is a gain of? It's a lot of stories behind. One is a gain of function research. We should, and my personal view is, I think we should not give to gain of function, because you're tinkering with the viruses, how they mutate, right? That's if I understand if I understand the process correctly. That is a little dangerous, because we don't have the control of the situation there. The second part is that, is it we have how the animals that we interact with them, and this is to be a global issue rather than an individual issue or an individual country's issue. I think we need to, what do you think of this? Where is it came from, this COVID-19, and how do you not prevent the future pandemics like this happen is going to happen?
Right. This is a real sticky question, because I think some gain of function research could be really valuable for helping us develop new vaccines quicker, right? So really saving lives. But if you're going to do that, it's got to be done in the most secure facility, and you've got to really make sure that it's pretty limited. So it gets to be really hard, because now you have to have not only trust in the people who are doing that in your country, but you have to have trust around the world, right? So for example, I think that there's some very solid, really good science done at the Wuhan Institute. They've had a couple of biosafety incidents that were pretty serious, right? I'd be nervous about them doing gain of function research, right? Because
at least we should not fund that outside of the United States, because at least we know what the process here, right?
Yeah, but so I think that there are some experiments that you want to say, we just are not going to do that. That it is just too dangerous. We don't want to take a chance. And there's some other things that I think probably we should say, okay, let's make sure we're doing it right, and that the benefits way outweigh any possibility of harm, right? A really, really tricky question. I have a good friend, Michael Imperiali, who's spent a lot of his life thinking about this issue, and we discuss it a lot, and I'm still on the fence about things.
So let me, before I hand over to the you were saying a little bit about CRISPR, the pandemic. How do you the vaccines are now, we have big debate about vaccines right now. People are saying this good vaccine, so there is a lot of benefits. Cancer vaccines are really is going to be the future of the game. That is, what is your, as a microbiologist, what do you think the vaccine? There is a kind of a double talk about it. Where do you stand on the vaccine world?
Vaccines save lives, period. Okay. Now, to get a vaccine to the market, you need to go through a lot of really careful studies. And it's important. It wouldn't not make sense for us to develop a vaccine and start giving it to people. We don't know the efficacy. We don't know the potential side effects. And there are our immune system, whenever it reacts to anything, can have a side effect, right? So I think it's really important to know those things. But it's also true that there are diseases that cannot be treated in other ways, that vaccines have been amazing. Let's just talk polio, right? Polio was a serious problem. My grandmother was paralyzed. She didn't have use of her legs because of polio as a kid, right? So I was raised with this real intense awareness of what could happen. And the number of children's lives who were saved and who were allowed to be functional, grow to functional adults because of the polio vaccine is just phenomenal. Nowadays, talk about anti-cancer vaccine, the papillomavirus vaccine is really making phenomenal strides in saving lives, right? And one of the big arguments against the papillomavirus vaccine is that it can be associated with sexually transmitted diseases. And so if people are vaccinated, they're not going to have any reason not to do risky sex. I just think people who are going to do risky sex are going to do risky sex. And the other people, you could potentially really save lives. And so I think we need to think about that like that. I mean, I can go on about this for a long, long time, but there is a lot of lunacy in this field right now.
Yeah, that's a pretty weak argument. I mean, there's no shortage of argument on all sides of these issues these days. And I think that's half the problem is the science, the science, the science, the science. Where's the science and how do we get the science? Just like the research we were talking about earlier, we want to get our wonderful research to the public in a way that it can be usable. The science has to get to the people in a way that's usable. And we have to be able to hear in a way that it sinks in to the public where the science can be applicable and save the lives. That's why we're doing what we're doing.
Right. You know, Susan, I think that this idea of effective communication with the public, this is a place where science and scientists have really failed in the past generations. There were some people who were good communicators, but overall, we haven't maintained that back and forth with the public. So they think of scientists as people who care about the same things and become trustworthy when you hear a face. And that's why social media and the kinds of shows like you guys are doing are so valuable, because the audience you can reach is so great. And you can go away with a feeling for a person instead of just something that you read or something that a reporter talked about it. It becomes more real. So, thank you.
That's it. That's everything, Dr. Maloy. The connection is key. The connection, building the relationships, having people such as yourself on here with your vast knowledge, and to be able to share it, I think, in a way that's not people. You know, you start talking about quantum sensors, and that's kind of one of the reasons I'm here with Romana. You know, who has friends like you guys. I am so blessed to be here with you, to be learning from you. But it's my voice. I hope to kind of bring your knowledge, everyone that Romana has on here, to in a usable kind of meat and potatoes manner, so that people can hear us and trust, like you said, trust us. We are people just like you. I should say you guys, but the brains like you guys, but getting the brains down to the streets, I think, is a goal for all of us.
Thank you for the compliments, Dr. Maloy, coming from you. Let us talk about a little bit about CRISPR, that I wanted to ask you, so you have a double-edged sword here, the AI, somebody sitting down and artificial intelligence can produce a deadly virus in small town, in a terrorist town. That's what he wants to destroy the universe entire. Or you want CRISPR engineering is also aiding to that point. How do we navigate this very dangerous world of bad actors?
In the United States, after we had our big 9/11 incident, we had the Merthax case where people where a person, a bad actor, if you would, was sending anthrax to people to try to infect them and kill them. And so that really made the US start to think a lot about these kinds of bad actors. And this was close to the time I was ASM president. And so I had a lot of involvement talking to federal agencies, the FBI and the CIA, about how you detect those things. And one of the things that really tends to be true is that if you're making something really, really bad, and you're not a real serious expert with this amazing facility that somebody would probably identify, your probability of killing yourself before you kill anybody else
That's
is
good
so
news.
much higher, right? And there are so many cases where bioterrorism efforts, in fact, backfired, and they
Really?
didn't serve the purpose because the people just didn't know enough microbiology, or they didn't have the kind of facilities to do what they needed. I hope it stays that way, but I also think this is a case where we do need to have ways of stockpiling solutions, right?
Let us talk about some business, before I'm going to next question. I'm going to let it Susan come down. Let us talk about the business aspect of the laboratories, labs. There is actually one tomorrow, next week, Wednesday. There is a Tina Brosia. She's coming from. She's infectious disease doctor. She writes stories of mystery diseases, that in the columns in the Medium and other magazines. So I think these are all where the virus came in. Sometimes they found out. So what she's saying, one of the things is big problem with the labs are they're not giving on time because you don't know exactly what that mystery disease is, and they want to send the sample to them and find out, hey, you want to do metagenome testing, all the comprehensive testing. They said, oh, we are closed. We have to come tomorrow, and then. So how do you stop this dangerous world we are in? We need about 24 hours access to the labs, and that's a very you run the lab and with your brother, as you said. So tell us a little bit about the evolution of these labs.
Yeah. So in the past, not so long ago, 20 years ago or so, it was really true that if you're doing a sophisticated test, you needed to send it out to another place, right? And so when my brother and I started doing this lab stuff, it was before we had the internet. That says something about my age. and so basically, if a hospital didn't do a test itself, it would, for example, take a blood sample and it would send it off. Somebody would drive that sample across town to a place where they could do the test. That place did the test. Somebody drove the results back to the place. And then when the result got there, the doctor had to be in-house. It had to be ready to be able to take that result and turn it into a therapy, right? That's a big time lapse. That's enough time people could be dying in between, right? Yeah. And so that's really improved in that a lot of labs can do more sophisticated things. But now what's really clear is we need what's called point of care diagnostics, right? And that is, as we miniaturize, and I know you're really into quantum dots and quantum approaches, and also biosensors, but as we miniaturize, in a lot of cases, there's no reason that in the near future, at somebody's bedside, when we're taking that sample, we should be able to get it and figure out really quick. And that might be something, let's just say the person has an infection, they're not responding to antibiotics. Boom, point of care at their bedside, what antibiotic might work for them, right? And often when a person is in that stage where the antibiotic's not working, they may have a limited time, right? Because there's a certain point where you are just too far over the edge to come back to life. And so this is an area that we are making great advances in right now. And it may be that the reason we will be slow is not because of science, but because of economics.
Dr. Maloy, I was just sitting here thinking, first of all, that's a huge, interesting area of point of care. Oh my gosh, you know, how many times we put on an antibiotic and while we're sending and waiting and hoping for the best, and then having to call them back and change it out. It's a whole huge gap in care. But thinking about all these emerging infectious diseases, what do you say? Because I'm sure I read something about bacteria being involved in this process and the transfer of genetic material between bacteria. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah. Yeah. So virtually all living organisms have ways of transferring DNA. In humans, we call it sex, right? In microbes, so bacteria and viruses, under a variety of conditions, can exchange little pieces of DNA, right? And so if a bacterium that can't live in a human, let's say, you know, it lives in the dirt outside, but it picks up a resistance to an antibiotic. Now, if it comes in contact with a bacterium that can live in a human, but doesn't have the resistance, it can transfer that resistance gene, that DNA, and now we have a new drug-resistant human pathogen, right?
Tricky little sucker.
This comes back to the One Health issue that we talked about, where something a lot of antibiotic resistance actually comes from organisms in the environment, right? And by the way, so the reason for that, the reason bugs develop antibiotic resistance is to be resistant to each other, right? So in the environment, there's all kinds of bacteria there. And if one bacterium can kill the other, it gets more food for itself, right? So they develop antibiotics, right? And they fight each other. And every once in a while, a new one picks up this resistance. You have to have the resistance yourself if you're going to use it to kill somebody else, right? So anyway, it's a complicated thing, but that exchange is happening all the time. I can't pull this number out of my head right now, but if you look at the amount of that exchange in the world's oceans, virtually every organism has a chance to exchange within a matter of minutes in the entire ocean in the US. I mean, in the entire US. The ocean's not in the US, in the entire ocean on our planet.
I knew what you meant. We knew what you meant. That's huge. Gosh. Oh.
You know that you mentioned about quantum side. I'm going to talk about a little bit, if you don't mind, a little bit about the quantum side of the. Just let me. I got the wrong one. Let me see that. Yeah, it's a Dr. Maloy. You know, I'm teaching a professor, the English professor ABCDs. I'm teaching you. This is you don't need a. I'm ashamed to talk with you, but you know, I'm a quantum junkie. You know, I feel that is a, I love to do that. You know, this is this is a quantum biology that I was talking about. That actually why people like Dr. Malloy is so important, Susan, is that this interaction with the biology and the physics and the quantum physics, and then new things are coming up. We need all this interactive, all the multiple fields in the sense that that's why quantum mechanics cannot happen in a wet and warm place like a human body. That's what the people used to think. But nature found its subway system. Quantum mechanics, more and more evidence is coming up with the quantum mechanics is playing a role in the human body itself. That's a very strange. So this is two aspects. Are just a very. This is not for Dr. Malloy, but this for people who don't know much about quantum physics. One of the things I always talk about how the two concepts, that is how the quantum phenomena works. One is that if there's a cheese up there there is a maze, how the serial computer that the mouse goes and then hit the wall, come back, and eventually it finds the cheese. The series of steps. In quantum mechanics, this is a very rude example, but I'm going to give it to them. It becomes a kind of a ghost, and it becomes all thousands of ghosts, and take all possible paths, and then find the cheese in the shortest distance, and then go back. That is the simplest and very dumb way of explaining the quantum physics.
No, it's not. It works very well. It works very well.
And then
I was
also
going to
tunnel through. There is a
all
very
at once.
Dr. Maloy is an expert in this. Probably the tunnel through quantum low energy to higher energy. That is like you're going through a wall. The humans going through a wall. There's a quantum tunneling. That's another aspect of these. These two aspects play a role in the quantum biology. That's I want to tell you a little bit about the solar battery. For example, I'm going to talk about the quantum effect of this side. Solar battery was invented by the phenomena was actually photoelectric effect was invented by discovered by Albert Einstein. He won the Nobel Prize for that. He was not a Nobel Prize for E is equal to mc square. He won the Nobel Prize for the solar battery basically.
Hmm.
He said that how the photons, a quantized photons, create this one. But there is something that in the that is a sunlight falls on the retina that able to see. So now quantum physics is coming in the picture. There's a quantum sight, quantum smell, quantum breathing, and a quantum mind. I'm going to give you a little bit of a. Some of them are still on the edges of it, of science, but still is a very promising field. For example, single photo, the eye can detect Susan, you will be surprised. The eye can detect single photon. Not a no battery. Battery need billions of photons to recognize even the charge. Solar battery. Eye is so efficient. It can recognize even a one single photon. That is a very strangest thing. So I is a very efficient. What it does is our the solar battery is a 50% efficient than 98% efficiency our vision, the visual cortex. Biologic it found a biological subway. When photon hits the eye, it becomes a quantum, all the ions become a quantum phenomenon. It takes all the possible paths to the visual vortex. All that goes there. There's a electrochemical energy goes there in the all possible paths and recognizes, and then it becomes a fixed that one. Come back and fix it the fastest way. That's why we have so much information we can process all possible paths it takes. So our eye has a quantum phenomena inside. That's what
Hmm.
they're thinking is actually photoelectric effect. The trees, for example, these are best computational thing. It does the run the photoelectric effect. Is the quantum computation does that because that exton, Dr. Malloy can explain a lot better than me, but that is exton that is going there and then reaching the energy source is a very very interesting. That's a chlorophyll. That is a really interesting phenomena they're talking about. Then next is quantum smell. For example, our noses of humans can only recognize the 400 receptors they have. Maybe 10,000 smells we can detect, but we can detect a lot more smells than some people can say the difference between the northern Italian wine to southern Italian wine. There is the special experts actually. The reason was they're saying that quantum tunneling is playing a role because we may not have all the receptors enough to recognize all the millions of smells, but the reason was the quantum tunneling that is the pair that creates that kind of quantum tunneling is creating this vibrational spectrum, is creating that kind of phenomena. Quantum smells, we can smell a lot more without that classical physics is not possible. In the quantum world it is possible to smell. So that is a new thing that is coming up in the physics side. The regular then you know uh, that the for example smells the smell, for example, even the people that smell musk, that sweet and clean, and then deteriorated musk, burnt and roasted, you can tell the difference, but chemically they're same, there's no difference. So it's actually that is a quantum phenomena is playing a role there. So that's about the 360 receptors in genes we have, but we can smell 10,000 smells. If I'm wrong, Dr. Malay, excuse me, I'm not a biologist. I'm giving a very broad idea about these kind of things. So molecular vibrations and the spectrum of smells are kind of solutions for this problem. That's think. That's Judith Kleinman. She's the one. This of quantum breathing. She found out that the way push out the carbon dioxide. It is not possible without a quantum effect. The enzymes come in the picture. We can carbonic acids. We can push it out through a lot more. Otherwise, we would have been dead. Because they could not survive. You can comment anything, Dr. Malay. You can come and jump in anything anytime you wanted to add something. You're more than welcome. So this Judith is actually, I don't know if she got the Nobel Prize, but she deserves it. Judith Kleinman, she's UC Berkeley. She was actually awarded a civilian highest honor in the Obama administration, but she did this quantum tunneling. She found out these enzymes can, the lower energy to the higher energy, they jump into the enzymes reaction, catalytic reactions. So it's a very interesting things that we are in the body. There's a mystery there.
Could I jump in for 1 second, Ramon?
Please.
Just before we came on this podcast, I listened to a talk this afternoon about hearing and sound. Okay, and this also applies in this case. So, when we hear a sound, we think of it as being a single noise. It's coming and hitting our ears. But in fact, it's bouncing off of everything all around us and coming to us in billions, maybe millions, many different directions, different levels. And our brain has to take all of that together through a quantum process and turn it into a recognizable sound instead of just some blur of noise. So just like the eye, the ear does this as well.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
It is. So that is one of the things that they're talking about. The Amarov, the anesthesiologist, Stuart Amarov, and Dr. Roger Penrose, Oxford physicist. They talk about in the thought. They think that the thought itself emerges from the quantum collapse in the microtubules in the neurons. Thought comes out of the quantum phenomena. That's what they think. That's what their claim is. At least there is a lot of new evidence is coming up actually in that direction. Quantum mind is a possible that a wave function is collapsing in the microtubules in the neurons. It's a very strange phenomena, but I think as Dr. Malay was saying that it is maybe our brain is filtering a lot of things. We don't see real. We see something filtered reality. We don't know the actual reality in the world. Maybe that is our mind is, because the reason is, Dr. Malay, maybe you can tell me, that is, our biology, our physics and the mathematics and everything is tuned towards survival, not for understanding the nature itself, the true nature itself, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think we would be lost in all the details if we didn't have a way of processing them and integrating them very, very quickly in these quantum mechanisms.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
But a presentation like this, bringing quantum, even just the word, but right down to our actual senses, again, makes it more accessible to anybody and everybody who wants to learn about quantum. You think of quantum of everything and all at once. It's really big to learn. But when you learn about it from your hearing and your sight and your senses, it really brings it home.
Everything all at once. Somebody ought to name a movie that.
That's a good one. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's what they say. They call it collapse of the orchestrated objective reduction. That's what was Roger Penrose and then the Amarov, Dr. Stuart Amarov projects. Actually, they came up with a new evidence recently. The brain in the neurons coordinating together. We don't know how they're coordinating and it's firing the same time exactly. That is one of the phenomena we don't understand it. It is exhibiting a quantum phenomena and coordinating something that is beyond our understanding, how the neurons are coordinating our brain. That is a really fascinating science itself. So quantum physics is going to be, Dr. Malay, when I was 1990s, I was a young kid and I was started selling computers to the doctors, in their offices. And then they said that what the computers will do in the doctor's office, they're useless. That's what they said in 1990s. Now, that's what I'm going to tell them now. The quantum physics is coming to the doctor's office. You don't know that it's going to be, you may be laughing at them, but it's going to be the future of the future of the process. That is a we are actually, that's what the Richard Feynman said, that quantum, the nature itself is that's the mysteries on the inside all of us. That's what I say. They said that nature itself is quantum itself is not a classical David. That's what the Richard Feynman said. That I take these words as a physicist and a celebrated physicist. Thank you for watching. Let me bring our guru, our man with wisdom, Dr. Dr. Maloy, back to the system. Yeah, what do you think? It is just I'm giving a.
Yeah, I think that that's really valuable, and I think that one of the things you might mention is, so you talked about ways this is happening in our body. Why don't you say something about your thoughts relative to how this could be developed for therapeutics?
Yes.
Quantum
Yeah.
technologies.
Yes. That's how I met you guys. San Diego State University gave me that option. I became an industry mentor for the quantum sensors. Thank you for that opportunity. That really I've been working on it for a while. I've been talking about quantum sensors. And there's another sensor, Bose-Einstein condensate state. It is called if you take a water, for example, I'm giving you very basic. If you cool it, it becomes ice. When you cool all the way to the Kelvin minus 273 degrees, there's like a lowest temperature in the universe. What it becomes a wave. It's a phenomenally strangely disappears because it has to satisfy the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Position and momentum cannot be in the same place, so it will disappear for us. It becomes a wave. So that phenomena, that is now they're talking about Bose-Einstein condensate. The Bose is from India. Sachendranath Bose is a statistician. Einstein is they are very strangely collaborated together, but that is approved they experimentally proved in the Colorado University of Colorado. So the professors, they got the Nobel Prize. They are using the Bose-Einstein quantum state to have the quantum sensors now. They also can detect very minute diseases. The day, Susan, women are suffering the cancer. Breast cancer is one of the devastating one. You can detect, we don't know until mammogram. By the time I used to offer a lot of radiology systems, by the time a mammogram, it is already too late. To be honest with you, it is not a preventive. That is a very, very, so we need to find the way before, 5 years in advance. Where is that triggering? That's only possible through quantum sensors, ultra sensors like a Bose-Einstein condensate state. Those are the things that are helpful. Dr. Maloy, I'll let you comment on it.
Well, so I'll just say, to put it in perspective, a reason these quantum sensors can do that is because they can process so much information, but they can also exclude the extraneous information, right?
That's a magic.
This is the tunneling process where you're finding that sweet spot there. And what that means is that something that you wouldn't get any signal because there's so much noise now can give you a real signal saying that is the cancer cell you care about, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm sitting here. Sorry, that's what I'm thinking this whole time. I'm thinking chaos theory because there's just so much coming in, but yet the words you just used a little bit ago, Ramana, were coordinated and orchestrated. And Dr. Maloy, that's what you're just describing. It's actually takes so much.
Yeah.
Right down to this coordinated, orchestrated one cell. One cell.
Yeah.
All the oceans in the world down to one cell.
Yeah. That is an amazing, right? Susan, I think that is exciting area. People like on the forefront of Dr. Maloy and all of the people are leading it. I think we're going to see cancer. Dr. Maloy, I want to ask you, cancer is the one where everybody's getting older, everybody's worried about it. This cancer is the one area we don't understand it. We're really what the holy grail. As a physicist, there's a one universal force. Albert Einstein thought about there should be only one force, origin itself. But we don't know. Cancer is like thousands of cancers, hundreds of cancers. We don't know where is that origin coming from. How do you recognize that the holy grail of that disease?
So I think that the problem is when the word cancer was invented, it was describing the few things we knew about that we thought were similar. And there are similarities, but there's similarities among viruses. But if you just say, oh, this is a virus disease, and you don't say what kind of virus, it doesn't really give you much information, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's the key. The big thing about cancer is that a particular cell of virtually any type, right,
Yeah.
has the ability to grow and divide and not stop when the neighboring cells tell it it's time to stop, right?
Yeah.
And every once in a while, then after it's grown, it breaks away and goes to some other place and metastasizes and continues to grow there and causes disease. But that's it. But it could be a lung cell, right? It could be a tongue cell. It could be virtually anything. And so I think part of the problem with cancer is that the reason they're doing this, there are a whole bunch of reasons. There's not a unifying hypothesis behind that, right? To me, this is why detection, I want to come back to these quantum detectors. This is why detection becomes so important.
Yes.
Because if you get it early, you can do something about it. And you don't have to have a magical cure that works for all cancers at all stages, right? I mean, it becomes a very different magnitude of problem solving, right?
And detection comes back to that communication with the public, because we can have all the bedside, we can have all the point of care, we can have these amazing detections, but if we cannot speak the language of the people who we can, to get them to them so that they use them and use them early and use them often, then we have work to do there too. So lots of work on both sides still.
It's true, but the other thing that's pretty amazing is, so I actually just went in for a physical early this morning, and they say, do you smoke? And I say, no. They say, how old is your father? My father died because he died of lung cancer and he smoked. And this is something we know. There's no ifs or buts about whether smoking causes lung cancer. And look at the number of people who still smoke, right?
Yeah.
So,
the people like nurses, like Susan, always talk about the prevention, but they need to. I think communication, as Susan says, that is correctly, the medical communication, science communication is critical in this area. We don't have enough. People think we have enough communication channels. We don't. I was surprised when I opened this podcast, Dr. Maloy. There's a lot of doctors. Somebody said that the doctors don't have time. They don't have time to listen. But in fact, they are curious people. They want to learn. I was just mentioning a quantum sensor on the way to in the radiation oncology conference. That doctor stopped in the middle, and then how is that? Just tell me, explain to me. He was asking me, just if you don't mind, I want to play that just a 5-minute video that I interaction with him. If you don't mind, I'll do that. It's a little bit of a little bit stitch, but I'm going to do that a little bit if you don't mind. Yeah. With Radiation Oncology Conference in San Francisco, I'm here. Dr. Hasan Murshid is here. He's from Bangladesh, but he writes a lot of books. He's a very amazing. He's not even a teaching physician. He's a practicing oncologist. Are you practicing oncologist?
Yes.
Yeah, tell us the background of your words, Dr. Murshid.
Well, I came to United States to study radiation physics, and I was a physicist, and I worked as a physicist for a few years. Okay.
Same with me.
And the physics was application in medicine. Then I wanted to be in radiation oncology because it's connected.
Yeah.
And then I went to residency program and became radiation oncologist, and I practiced in Panama City, Florida for the last 20 years now.
What inspired you to write a book? A lot of people wanted to do the business side of it and all this. What really inspired? Book writing is not an easy thing. I wrote one book. It takes so much energy and the time, and you have to bleed almost. So what inspired you to write a book?
So that's a very good question. So when I was a resident, all residents have a lot of notes as they're training and preparing for the exams. So as I finished my training, I realized that I have lots of notes that can be useful for my junior residents that coming into the residency program at that point. To help the residents, the younger residents, I compiled my notes into a small book for residents back in 2006. That was the initial reasoning for writing a book. Eventually, of course, I wrote many editions, and then this became a book for the practicing radiation oncologists. But in the beginning, I wanted to help the residents like myself, so I wrote the book.
What they look in your book?
So if someone is seeing a patient, like I have a prostate cancer patient scheduled to see me for a consultation at 10 in the morning, and I'm back-to-back patients all day long. I don't have too much time. I need to quickly look up the prostate cancer diagnosis, prostate cancer treatment options literature for how the studies were done. I'm going to a tumor board, for example, where a lot of doctors are going to come together and have a conference to discuss a specific cases. I need to be able to present my case and present data to promote and recommend what treatment I'm giving to this patient. And the book has all the studies, literature summarized in addition to the actual treatment recommendation. So radiation oncologists can look it up quickly and find a recommendation and look the data as well.
I am a physicist myself, and I did not do the practicing radiation oncology side. Tell us a little bit about that, the relationship between the physics and the oncology.
Oh yes, there's a strong relationship between the radiation physics and radiation oncology, because radiation oncology uses computer, data, science, images, fusion, planning. This all linear accelerator itself, the machine that gives the radiation treatment needs to be maintained in a high quality calibration. This all requires physics input and physics supervision. So that's where the physics comes into play, because radiation itself interacts with the tissue. There's a physical interaction, and the physicist knows best how to calculate all of these things for the planning to be done.
Does it give your book also talk about modalities, or just in general treatment, targeting treatment, and the prognosis and monitoring, or do you talk about modalities also, like a proton therapy, electron beam therapy, gamma knife? Do you tell us a little bit about that?
The book also has modalities. This is 4 sections. Section 1 or part 1 has the basics of radiation oncology, which includes radiation physics, safety, radiation biology, and molecular biology. Then section 2 has all the modalities, like you mentioned, electron, you have gamma knife, you have stereotactic radiation therapy, proton as well, brachytherapy, IMRT, IGRT. It has part 2 has all these modalities. And part 3 and part 4 discusses the clinical part of the radiation oncology.
Congratulations for your book. It's a beautiful book. There are a lot of books he wrote. One of the books is a very well-known book that it's called Radiation Oncology, Fundamentals of Radiation Oncology. Congratulations, Dr. Hassan Murshad. Good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's
that was really nice. By the way, you may note, as I'm a bibliophile too, and a couple of these rows of books behind me are books I've written. So
I was gonna say, you know what? I'm gonna have to step up my game here. You guys are all writing a bunch of books. I'm just hoping via osmosis, something you guys are offering me here tonight, I'm gonna absorb. But yeah, I'm gonna have to step up my game there, book writers.
Well, writing a book is one of those things that in the end you have something you can be really proud of, and as long as it does the job and serves the people and helps them learn, then it really is a
Dr. Maloy, it's truly an honor to talk with you. You know, he's one of my best, the career of my life is talking with you. You know, you're truly an innovator, and, at this age, you're still innovating. You're not, we want people like you to really communicate science to all of us, and then really inspire, be your inspiration for all of us, people like us. Thank you so much for joining with us. It is truly an honor and a privilege.
Well, thank you, Ramana. Thank you, Susan. It was great fun talking with you, and good luck with everything.
Thank you both so very much. Have a great night.
Good night.
We are retelling their stories through our patented designs that can be worn on scrubs, t-shirts, printed on conference bags, and endless other promotional materials. Daily Wear for Medicine is the first ever of its kind to create curiosity in medicine through visual art. We at MedBricks are celebrating unsung heroes of the past who made enormous contributions to the field of medicine through our unique campaign called Daily Wear for Medicine. You can wear it, carry it, and give it.